Dear friends, I'm glad to welcome you to the Fagan Life channel. Today is Wednesday, February 26th. The time is 9:02 p.m. in Kyiv, 10:02 p.m. in Moscow, and we are conducting another stream on our channel, which we have named in the most general way, Trump's New Friends. Well, every day there are news updates that are, in general, relevant to our broadcast topic. It turns out that the former America, at least rhetorically and publicly, no longer exists, as new values, new friends, and all this indicates a fundamental shift, a doctrinal shift, I believe, in American politics. However, again, this is not final, it is not fatal, and this is what we will be discussing with Andrei Andreevich Pionkovsky, as usual, on Wednesdays. Andrei Andreevich, we are glad to welcome you.
Good afternoon.
Well, the latest statement from Trump, just but a few minutes ago, agencies published that it turns out Putin is smart, and that they are already considering lifting the sanctions. So let me quote, if I may. And NATO, Ukraine should forget about it. Ukraine will not receive security guarantees from the USA, but the USA will not only return the $30 billion previously provided to it, but also profit from Ukraine. Trump's statement, Putin is a very, very smart politician here. Putin does not wish harm upon the United States. There you go. If he makes compromises, USA will lift. This was actually stated by Trump. Well, there are some other things, but and the only reason for existence, Trump stated, since its formation is opposition to the states. Therefore, in the coming days, a 25% tariff will be imposed on cars and generally on everything. Well, that's what Trump is declaring. It turns out now Putin is his best friend. And there on our preview, there are others like that, because with Putin, it's clear with whom Trump prefers to maintain complementary relations. So, look, my first question, well, you can elaborate on it as you see fit. We don't quite understand why the deep state is silent. The establishment, we hear nothing about this collectively. I'm not talking about Senator Wicker and Sanders from different sides. These are all private statements from individual politicians, senators. But there is no collective, formalized, resolute opinion from the American establishment. Is this how it is now? Is this forever now? Is it irreversibly fatal? So to speak, does the American political class agree with this or not? What do you think about this, Andrei Vladimirovich?
The position of the Republicans is of particular interest, of course. The Democrats, naturally, are very strongly opposed, although, actually, one of the mistakes, the main one of President Biden, was indecisiveness and cowardice. It was largely dictated in its nature by this left wing. Democrats, pro-Russian. He was focused on them, oriented towards them. Well, now, all the Democrats are kind of united. And Trump, having forgotten about his responsibility in the established state of affairs, I'm sorry, there will be Democrats and Republicans, rightly so, a number of leading senators, first and foremost, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, he is an important figure. Lindsey Graham, I remind you, he is the chairman of the Budget Committee in the Senate. The budget is currently under discussion. Nothing will pass without him. Here, essentially, the Republican readiness will finally manifest if we resist, because there are opportunities for this. The majority, there are 3 Republicans in the Senate, so it's enough to have 4 there, relentlessly chasing after Ukrainian forces, none how they can block.
For example, the deal with Putin. Let's put it that way, although it's complex.
The deal with Putin is a multidimensional phenomenon. It includes embraces, complements, financial aspects. Actually, what makes Trump most dangerous now in his dealings with Putin is the removal of the current military aid, which is ongoing and continuous according to the law. Remember, there was a significant struggle for $4 billion. Now it is funded until the end of March. It has been allocated, and Trump can't do anything about it. The budget discussion is ongoing. Mitch McConnell, as the chairman of the Budget Committee, has included funding for military aid to Crimea until 2030. We'll see how it goes further. So the possibility at Raganovsky, so to speak, I don't even call it a wing, let's say the mindset of Republicans, the big ones in Congress, it's blocking on the budget issue. Because we see these sharp statements from Republican senators, in particular, I especially liked Senator Vicker, who very immediately and strongly said that we are dealing with a dictator like Hitler, who should definitely be promptly arrested, in fact, executed. So the mood is there. It's just a matter of how they will manifest. But we remember the same trio of mics. They haven't gone anywhere. In the House, there were rumors that Macron was leaving. No, he remained the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. So I'm expecting this clash in Congress regarding funding. Political decisions, they physically transform into funding, whether there will be military aid or not. But this is understood by Ukraine, understood by Europe, that perhaps this will lead to nothing, such a Republican revolt. Therefore, Europe is already drawing certain conclusions for itself. Well, in fact, Mr. Hazit explained everything to them perfectly. This ballet with transgenders, the past, 50-50 votes in the Senate with the help of the vice president's vote. Venci, there's a lot being said about Venci's own rowdy performance. But it was such an empty stunt. However, serious matters were discussed, said Hearst. They spoke quite openly. Firstly, about Ukraine. Yes, we are working there on a peaceful ceasefire, but we are not going to guarantee Ukraine's security. Europe should handle that. Moreover, I must frankly tell you that in the current fighting situation, we cannot at all, regardless of Ukraine, focus on Europe. Our attention is on our own borders against the demagoguery about what's there. On our own borders, millions of Mexicans are being born in the Far East, the Pacific, where we are threatened by a great power. And Europe, please handle it yourselves. That is, it could be put differently. Well, essentially the same, but in different forms. It's either a statement about the dissolution of the NATO bloc or the withdrawal of the United States from the NATO bloc. In a few words, what is the NATO bloc? The NATO bloc is a guarantee to the United States of Europe's security enshrined in the so-called Article 5 nonsense, and Europe, having served, is seriously thinking about its own security. I think that this final turn, such people can no longer be tested. Well, the Russian-speaking Trump supporters here are funny, thinking something clever like Trump and so on. Today's, as quoted, I haven't heard them yet, today's series of statements is, in my opinion, the most consistent, but the effect. Let's analyze the effect. I won't dwell on 2 points. The effect of this betrayal. No, betrayal is incorrect. There was nothing for Trump to betray. He was never a bearer of this American idea. And the mockery, or rather with analytical security, this transition openly to the enemy's side, the effect on Ukraine, on the United States and on him in the rings of Cain. Here, Putin was unlucky. Whether Moscow is smoking champagne there, well, what's happening in Moscow is a special case. There are such things for us in Moscow. The layers of the population of the Magnitsky broadcast were not in this, but for intellectuals, they have intellectuals there. It's Dmitry Konstantinovich Simis, of course. Yesterday, Simis discussed Trump's portrait. Trump is the new Washington. He is in a new way shaping the United States. So, about why is Putin so interested in success of some peaceful negotiations with Trump? Why does he need negotiations about to be continued, a ceasefire when everything is going well for him, gradually progressing? But the fact is, he understands his strategies, military ones, despite the fact that the harm from the same betrayal of the bargain was not utilized in the brilliant successes of the miracle offensive on the Dnieper, the defeat of the fascists near Kyiv, and then the summer offensive on Kherson and in the Kharkiv area. And the war has moved into a stage of such a war of attrition, which of course gives Russia a strategic advantage. Russia has a strategic advantage, but it is a war of attrition for both sides. And in this war, Putin will not reach Kyiv nor even the Dnieper. His bet is different. He can take Kyiv through internal division, a split within Ukrainian society, within the Ukrainian elites, and his calculation will be complete. There they are with Trump. They will agree on some kind of ceasefire agreement, absolutely unacceptable for Ukraine, which the Ukrainian leadership will, of course, reject, but it will cause, they hope, for a broad discussion in Ukrainian society because war fatigue is a natural factor. What do you expect? It's the fourth year of the war. Let's remember how the fourth year of the war went during World War I in 1917. Austria, not only Russia, but Austria was already completely on the brink of collapse with an absolutely anti-war sentiment. In France, hundreds were executed by military tribunals, soldiers. And then in the fifth year, well, it turned out the way it did, thanks to the Bolsheviks in Russia. And then Germany simply could not continue the war on its own anymore. As it was, the war was saved by the Americans, not only with their numerical strength and armaments, but simply as a new, fresh force that was not affected by this 5-year Vashwani. Therefore, elements of fatigue. Yesterday, for example, there was such an organized, very colorful event, a speech by the mayor of Pokrovsk who called on Zelensky for peace, but in fact for capitulation. But such speeches are not only the actions of Ukrainian and Russian propaganda, they are an effect of fatigue. And simultaneously, Russia or Putin developed a theme that he immediately picked up. Trump about the negativity of Zelensky, about his own president, the need for new elections and so on to provoke a crisis within Ukrainian society and ultimately place it among the people to the position of president or acting president. Well, a figure not pro-Russian. You won't find a pro-Russian one there, but a person oriented towards national rapprochement. Let's understand we have a formidable enemy, such a version of the Ukrainian dream, if you will. Well, you see, it failed. This outrage at Trump's blatant pressure on Zelensky, and not only on Zelensky, but also on Ukrainian society, a monstrous thing. He was inventing a debt of $500 billion, which was simply the behavior of a racketeer and a thug. I think it led to the unification of Ukrainian society. Zelensky is largely dissatisfied. Many criticize him, but that's Zelensky, Vadim Alexandrovich. And Zelensky is a symbol of the Ukrainian state. His rating has even increased recently. And I think as a result, this betrayal by Trump and Trump's blatant attack on Zelensky and Ukraine, it eliminated for Putin the only remaining opportunity for his victory. His victory is the destruction of the Ukrainian state by military means. He cannot do it. Europe, with every fiber, roughly speaking, of its backside understood. Mr. Hetz, what kind of threat he poses, that there is no umbrella, no nuclear, can only defend itself independently. Neither this nor that it echoes in the speeches of Macron. And Starmer, very timely victory of Chancellor Macron from my Chancellor. He has already secured for himself this position very sharply. He will only strengthen this big European trio of England and Great Britain. Europe now understands that it's not even about the honor of Europe in saving its ally, but about its own security, because, well, clear, they have had this terrible sword hanging over them for all 75 years. And suddenly, yes, okay, the nuclear umbrella, the guarantee. But what if a president appears in the White House who refuses the security guarantee? Here he appeared. They have always dreamed of a European army, but fortunately, there is a European army now. This is what Zelensky has stated several times recently, and this is now emerging in the speeches of the old and the same. Well, first of all, he is positioned as the leader of Europe. There is a European army. These are the armed forces of Ukraine. This is an army that fights on equal terms, despite being vastly outmatched in resources and weaponry. It fights against the so-called second army of the world. A simple calculation for Europeans. If you have, there is none now, no security umbrella. If Putin already in November 22nd, 21st of the year issued you an ultimatum, get out of here to the border of Batria, the Batria-Jigashvili line. Do you want to fight Putin while there is a European army that is currently protecting you? Or when this European army, deprived of Western military aid, primarily from the Americans, will be defeated? This is natural logic. Now, it pushes them, makes their statements bolder. It has already become a cliche in the statements of these leaders of leading European countries, such a formula. But in my opinion, this formula can be welcomed, but it seems to me it indicates their lack of full understanding of complex situations. The formula is the same. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ready to send French troops to guarantee security after a ceasefire is established. Well, listen, the current situation is such that there will be no ceasefire provision. All these vile Ribbentроps, known for their deceitful ways, won't be about it. It's about this every day.
Speaking loudly, excuse me, for interrupting Andrei Andreevich. This is regarding the question. You touched on various types of Trumpists, although this is a common assessment of actions. He is allegedly dragging Putin into agreements, stroking his ego by publicly supporting his demands, thus defaming Zelensky and Ukraine, but he will drag him into some peace negotiations and achieve the desired result, peace, and simultaneously the preservation of Ukraine as a sovereign state. This is not worth discussing. For one simple reason, Moscow is not going to negotiate on any other terms except the complete surrender of Ukraine.
Shouting loudly every day.
And as you know, we talk about them every day.
Into all megaphones. And these idiots are basing it on one phrase from Trump. Trump said to me, Putin said that he doesn't express himself. Putin said that he doesn't express himself. This was in a phone conversation with translators. Oh my God, what is there to talk about? No, but the most advanced Russian-speaking Trumpists have already moved to another line of defense. Trump wanted to save them, but Ukrainians are to blame.
Yes, we also heard that they offended him, terribly offended him.
They offended him. They stole $500 billion from him. And in general, they don't want to fight.
They don't want to fight. No, well, that's very convenient. Zelensky is not like that. There's corruption, cronyism, and everything is attributed to the removal of unilateral obligations, which were taken on by the United States itself. Well, maybe not personally by Trump, but by the United States as subjects of international politics, as leaders of the West, in terms of supporting Ukraine as an ally through military means, political means, and so on, just suddenly taking and removing unilateral obligations. And what in return? In return, three. And you give, they say, to pay for the previous ones. Give us the middle of the land, metals, ports, oil, flanged gas, everything in the world. what to give, where to give, what to give. Moreover, there is a subtext in this notice. Moscow says that, yes, we are ready to cooperate with the United States regarding resources and investments in this area, including throughout the entire constitutional territory of Russia. I assume this includes parts of Ukraine's territory, Donbass, Pionkovsky's ice cream.
Trump, I'll give you all of this. I will give you all of this. Yes. And if you stop the aid, I will take all the territories and give them to you on even better terms.
Yes, yes.
Offer you better terms.
Well, this is a complete scam, an absolute scam for a total fool. For a second-year student with borscht on his collar, with horn-rimmed glasses, who doesn't understand how Moscow is having its way with him, you understand? So we are responding now. Okay, Trump's position is his own. Fine, let it be discussed. It's already pointless now. But the fact that someone is still trying to justify it, trying to grasp it, first they grasped one thing, now they want to sell people a new version that says don't resist, it will be weak now. It's indeed very pleasant for some, but it absolutely needs to be clearly refuted. And people undoubtedly need to be given a clear and truly real picture of what's happening.
I've definitely noted the level of readiness. We will not be sending. Nowhere will be sent for withdrawal. I think that in order to remain in world history, to manage to ensure the security of countries, they must send their years to the next, much higher level. Yes, they don't have ready infantry divisions to send for help, of course, but they have excellent air forces. Here I repeat my form. This is the most effective European army existing today. These are the armed forces of Ukraine, plus the air forces of France, the United Kingdom, Germany, Romania. I emphasize the air forces, not just some dozens of aircraft that will be operated by unknowns where Ukrainian pilots are trained, but active squadrons, militarily coordinated, experienced, operating under common leadership. This is the formula of the European army, capable of crushing, yes, racist aggression. You see, this is one form of psychological pressure, both on Ukraine and on Europe and on the military world. They have been proving to us all the time. But initially, by the way, it was the progressives who started this. The press organs, all these New York Times, with such a thesis. Yes, we sympathize with the Ukrainians, but you understand they will never be able to appear in Petersburg. Oh, they certainly can. They could do it. They could do it in the summer of 2022. They could have done it during their offensive if they had been given aviation. I think that, and Europe has no other choice. Either it understands that, thank you, the forces that can stop the Russian onslaught are the armed forces of Ukraine, plus the combined aviation of the West, or they will have to face the victorious Russian army without infantry divisions, judging by the sentiments. Oh, I think that Europe will go through this path quite quickly. Therefore, in conclusion, we consider the positive effect of Trump's betrayal on Ukrainian society. It mobilized them. It closed, very importantly, closed the only scenario of victory for Russia. And it mobilized Europe. Now, the question is about the survival of Europe, about the independence of European countries. And as for American society, we started with this question. There are only the first signs of this resistance so far. What is this myth? Deep state. We know that these are people. The deep state is these revenant Republicans and Truman Democrats who also exist. We will see this during the budget vote in the near future.
Understood.
Understood. But in Ukraine and Europe, one must prepare for the worst case scenario. That's why Macron is now did not openly quarrel with Trump. And by the way, Macron worked with this fool in the same way as Putin. He held his hand firmly, and it was clear that although he had a firm grip on him, it was very elegant, literally, when he tried to sell that 500 billion lie. "Excuse me," said Macron, "you're talking nonsense." But Macron played along with him a little because it was necessary, and he extracted it from him. This is to maintain the current flow of military supplies. After all, every day there are planes and shells. Shells are sent daily. And Trump said,
Yes, you can say that the aid is suspended.
"No Ukraine." What kind of statement is that today? I don't know. Yes, the last statement I heard at the meeting with Macron in response to his night at the tournament, "Yes, we will continue the current military aid until a ceasefire is achieved." That's what Trump told Macron. Perhaps he has already stepped away from the police. This government, it's very important.
Yes, now we will, of course, as you can see, examine in detail this quote.
Maybe it will be stopped.
Well, it says, 17 hours ago, there was a statement. Again, this should be divided by 2. Trump confirmed the halt of U.S. military aid to Ukraine. Currently, the U.S. is not providing Ukraine with any defense assistance, Trump reported. Well, it might imply a somewhat broader interpretation, right? They reported in the Rada that Kyiv stopped receiving purchased American weapons. The U.S. is currently not providing Ukraine with any defense assistance, stated American President Donald Trump. Fox News Channel, right now we are not providing anything, he said, responding to the relevant question. Russia condemns the supply of weapons. Well, this is a Russian source. I'm peeking in the Telegram channel. Again, this might be meant that, well, first of all, there are 7 Fridays in a week. With Trump, he might say one thing and something else happens, but it clearly reflects his intention.
Well, clearly there is some aid. It will be stopped in the foreseeable near term.
Perhaps we can assume that's the case.
Therefore, Europe should prepare for the worst case scenario.
No, well, of course, it's already obvious now. Why hope for changes for the better? It certainly won't happen quickly. Thousands of viewers are watching us. A big request to those who are joining. We have been on air for 28 minutes. Now, please share the links to this broadcast on your accounts, networks, groups. It's important for this broadcast to reach as many people as possible. Almost 4,000, well, indeed, out of a couple of hundred have given their likes. Please do us this favor as well. Please like and promote this broadcast. The number of views will greatly depend on those who are watching us. Watching on the Telegram channel, on the Fagan Life account, there is a live broadcast there, just like all these X on the Fagan Life account. But subscribe to this channel, both on Telegram and on the X network. And also subscribe to the Fagan Life channel on YouTube. Don't miss the opportunity to do so right now, just like with the channel. Andrei Andreevich Pionkovsky's writing is linked to this video under the name Andrei Pionkovsky. You can find the link to Andrei Andreevich's channel, subscribe, and watch their games there. So look, Andrei Andreevich, we want to understand one more very important thing. Because, well, with Europe, it's clear, so to speak, it is not less, but it has a chance. Moscow is rejoicing, celebrating. That's also clear. With America, we discussed that China. Here there remains some ambiguity. On one hand, China is surely jealous of any, so to speak, deal between Moscow and Washington without its direct involvement. On the other hand, Moscow is bowing to Beijing. Putin called Xi Jinping, sort of, in an official statement, as if reporting on the talks with Trump and the delegation in Saudi Arabia. China, in turn, formally declared its support for the peace process. But on the other hand, this seems like a tactic. Attempts to exclude China. Moscow will definitely justify itself. China will say that everything is fine. We are acting as mediators because clearly the strategic relations between Beijing and Moscow cannot be changed by any influence from Trump and attempts to lure Moscow into some of his own relations. Moscow will remain a firm and consistent ally of Beijing simply for ideological and other reasons that are close to it. Because as I have said many times, no matter what kind of Trump he is only for 4 years. He cannot be compared to Jinping, who is eternal, so to speak, just like Putin. These are systems that have a Siamese attraction, I mean, Beijing and Moscow. But still, what benefit does Beijing want and can extract from this situation? Or on the contrary, he will take a break and simply watch from the sidelines to see where this all leads. And this will surely lead to some point of bifurcation where there is no Trump plan. He hasn't announced it, as we have already mentioned. But there is a plan from Moscow, and they announce it every day. We hear it. It is the capitulation of Ukraine, the surrender of Ukraine. What do you think Beijing will do?
Well, first of all, in the comments on the latest speeches by Putin, the Chinese, in valuable statements it is subtly hinted at, and in the blogosphere it is openly expressed. Putin got a little carried away when he found Zarubin in the bushes again. Zarubin plays the role of the second suitcase for Kawa. He goes to the toilet with one, and here they laid out the pig initiative for him.
But there he eats like a wombat with bricks, and for Zarubin, he gives out diarrhea.
It's different. Well, only how he... Do you remember how he presented himself to Trump? And, well, not only that, now rare earth metals. We have much more, but especially if needed there, also in our new territories. And you need aluminum, right? Aluminum, let's go on camera. You need aluminum. We'll do everything. Build a huge hydroelectric power station there on the line. Cheap electricity. And it will be, even if you want it to be American, yes, it will be your plant there, and we will jointly develop the Arctic. Here, China has already become cautious. Which Arctic jointly? It's Chinese. It has been for a long time. And the Arctic, and there, for Eastern aluminum, after all, China has long considered it a special zone of influence. Putin got a little carried away here, but I want to talk about another player who has somehow been forgotten. In all the recent meetings, Zelensky's visit to Turkey went unnoticed. Perhaps it was very substantial. What date was it? I think it was on the 23rd this week. There. Dagan made an even more decisive statement than in Apple's. Of course, the territorial integrity of Ukraine. All of this is fully confirmed. And it's interesting that the next meeting of the Russians with the Americans is scheduled to take place in Istanbul. I would generally welcome the active return of Turkey to the role of mediator. Right now, the Americans cannot play the role of mediator between Russia and Ukraine, as they are 100% on the Russian position. Turkey is a much more consistent supporter of Ukraine. You remember it was the first to provide military assistance. And here, very serious scenarios arise. In the event of a truly European war, as we are currently discussing, indeed, a European army, the only combined force of Ukraine, but formally on European territory, if it exists. There is the Turkish army. The Turkish army is an exceptionally effective army. And people forget, I want to remind about such a circumstance, that in recent years, well, literally in 23-24, Turkey won 2 wars against Russia, both of times due to Russia's no-show, having chickened out on the battlefield. The first was the war in Karabakh in 2 rounds. Well, the first round was, it seems, in 21, when Moscow, out of habit as it had done for 20 years, organized some conflict between the Armenians and Azerbaijanis, which it usually reconciled within 2 weeks, and again acted as such a necessary mediator, which allowed it to manipulate both parties. Here the game went differently. Turkey, well, effectively deployed its troops, fully supporting with weapons when it took over Moscow. This and that did not appear, well, under various formal reasons, like it's the CSTO, it's not Armenian territory, and so on. Well, as much as you like. Well, in 1923 it ended. They simply expelled the Armenians due to what was effectively ethnic cleansing. Moscow also welcomed all of this. Well, there was, in fact, actually a motive. They wanted to punish Pashinyan's Soroshonok. Well, Soroshet is Soroshet, but geopolitically, this is a loss of Russia's position in the Caucasus and the return of Turkey to the Caucasus, to the positions it held around 1820. Practically, this is all about the Caspian. Azerbaijan is already a unified army formally. By the way, they have a unified army, which means, in fact, everyone forgets why, not to be outraged that the Azerbaijani army is a NATO army. And in Syria, Lida, it's already a long, drawn-out, ongoing, and complex rivalry between Turkey, which defended historically Sunni rebels, and Russia, which defended the siege. And when Turkey came to decisive performances, Putin also dissolved these relationships between guys like Dagan and Putin. They immediately form the first stakes. Therefore, theoretically, one can imagine various scenarios. Well, when talking about possibilities, we must consider stretch rinse, not the intentions of the state, but their capabilities. Russia is currently in a completely hopeless situation in Crimea and the Caucasus in the face of possible intervention by the Turkish army. This factor will be pressing, I think, and this should also be taken into account.
Well, okay, although again, indeed, Turkey has demonstrated shifts in its foreign policy line several times, and so to speak, its relations with Putin. It's clear that there is some reactivity from a number of, so to speak, players who in general react with jealousy or misunderstanding to the rapprochement between Moscow and Washington. To such an extent, with such speed, unexpectedly. Of course, it was possible to assume that Trump would change this relationship strategy in such a way, but not so quickly. In 5 weeks, you must agree. So let's see how Turkey will react. I am very skeptical about the idea that even Turkey is capable of any significant change, rather than just rhetorically. Erdogan will, of course, as before, maintain his rhetorical integrity regarding Ukraine, but he will not abandon economic or other geopolitical games with Moscow what Turkey, in alliance with Azerbaijan, managed to achieve in Karabakh and elsewhere, in Syria and so on, was also a kind of a tacit agreement or game with Moscow. This is also an element party of Turkey's strategy to elevate its status in the region.
This is precisely an example of using military force without direct engagement.
Yes, but he avoids confrontation, a final confrontation with Moscow. We see this, and Baku also, by the way, avoids it. Well, and Armenia, by the way, also doesn't go all the way. So here it means they all play cautiously, more or less. That's how I would put it. They are wary of Moscow. So almost 14,000, a bit more, are watching us. If possible, please share the links on your accounts and social groups. And there's just a little time left. We've been on air for almost 39 minutes. Let's then, Andrei Andreevich, try to at least finalize this whole story. We titled the broadcast Trump's New Friends, obviously discussing how this strategy is changing. If we look at it from an Estonian perspective, where could this lead? Where could it take us? Could this lead to the self-liquidation of the status of the USA as the leader of the free world, the leader of the West? And to whom would this status then transfer? Would it be a collective status, an individual status? I don't know, France, Britain, or these two countries, since they are members of the nuclear club, members of the UN Security Council with veto rights? Or is this truly a loss, a catastrophic one leading to the rise of China? Or will it be resolved in another way? What could be the long-term forecast regarding America's status? This is what concerns us the most. Will these so-called friends drag Trump into a quagmire from which the US will not be able to rise? Or is there still a chance for recovery in 4 years with a change in the Oval Office occupant?
By the way, speaking of new other Trumps, a clear representation is clearly given by the results of the vote on the Ukrainian resolution that was adopted I said that Trump joined the G19. G19 is 1990. The same 19 countries, like Equatorial Guinea, Papua Island, Nicaragua, all sorts of riffraff like that. But the United States is also there. China. No. China, by the way, is very important. And so did not hold the salon. China, Brazil, no. The United States, Russia, Israel, which of course can be explained by understandable reasons, but it's regrettable all the same. This is the big 19. Well, regarding the status, you ask about the status of the leader of the free world. Well, it's lying in the mud right now. Whoever bends down to pick it up will be the one. It seems to me right now, the main contenders, the trio of leaders of the three largest European countries are Macron, Sonata, and Merckx.
But they are not comparable in scale to the 20% of the world economy that belongs to the USA. So how do we deal with this?
To defeat Putin. There's no need for those percentages of the world economy. As I said, there's a very simple formula here. It can be done within a few months. By indeed actually deploying the air forces of the countries I mentioned into the war. This, it's truly political courage. They have been cautiously raising their claims of political readiness for a long time, but now they are deluding themselves, maybe even somehow to be continued. They're enjoying their own demise. We will send troops to everyone. There will be no preparations. No need there. No one is expecting from you. Infantry divisions, especially since this is always associated with political issues. For example, professional soldiers, my pilots, Air Force, can be sent without any problems for political. The wind it plays a decisive role will play. Can you imagine if tomorrow in Neva in Ukraine several hundred brilliant squadrons of these countries appear? But how do you not want to ensure a no-fly zone over Ukraine? A no-fly zone once they will destroy the remnants of Soviet aviation, and they will, of course, blow the Crimean Bridge to smithereens and everything else, meaning Putin will be put in a position of political defeat. It's time to discard all this. What is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? We sympathize with Rome, but they will never, never be able to defeat this formidable Russia. There is a very simple way.
And the very last question, Andrei Andreevich, in this situation, what do you think is Ukraine closer to deciding to acquire nuclear status, to regain nuclear status, conduct underground nuclear tests, and demonstrate that Ukraine has nuclear weapons? How likely is it, given the departure of Ukraine's main ally, to regain this nuclear status?
To some extent, a nuclear umbrella Ukraine already possesses, following Macron's well-known statement that France also has nuclear weapons. That is, they have three countries I'm talking about: the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. By the way, there is talk about the proliferation of nuclear weapons to Germany. They can quite possibly provide a nuclear umbrella for Ukraine. Then it is not in such a desperate situation that would require it now. Use self-esteem DIY solutions.
Yes. Well, 15,200 viewers are watching our broadcast right now, and 5,048 have given their likes. Thank you all so much for being with us on the air for these 45 minutes. A request, but once more, please share the links to this broadcast on your social media accounts in groups. Be sure to like this broadcast and share the links to it on your social media accounts. Subscribe to the Fagan Life channel and Andrei Pionkovsky's channel. Well, Andrei Andreevich, thank you. We'll see each other next week. Let's see how the situation develops. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Not always